Beyond the chains. The night was cold and silent. Two pale moons hung in the dark sky like watchful eyes, and the battlefield below still smoked from the war that had ended only hours ago. Frontier Outpost 49, a remote military base at the edge of human space, had become a graveyard of fire, broken metal, and fading echoes of gunfire. Private Rain Carter walked across the ash-covered field with his rifle slung low and blood drying on his sleeve. The war against the Zalari people had raged for years, and he had seen more death than he could count. But this night was different, because this time, the war had left someone, alive. She knelt in the mud with her wrists bound in metal cuffs that shimmered faintly under the twin moons. She was small, almost fragile, with skin the color of moonlit water and hair that caught the light like strands of silver glass. Her eyes, bright and luminous, flickered between fear and quiet defiance. She was an alien, a Zalari, and to the human army that made her the enemy. "Stand up," Rain said sharply, his voice rough from smoke and exhaustion. The girl hesitated, then slowly rose to her feet. The metal cuffs clinked softly as she moved. She wasn't wearing armor, just a thin, torn silver garment stained with dust and blood. She looked young, no more than 20. The war had begun because humans believed the Zalari were building weapons on the border worlds. They had called it a preemptive strike. But now, as Rain stared at her trembling figure, she didn't look like a soldier. She looked like a survivor. Two other soldiers walked past, dragging alien prisoners. One of them muttered, "She's just another one of them." "Don't look at her like that, Carter. They'd kill us if they could," but Rain didn't reply. He had seen monsters on the battlefield. This girl didn't look like one. They marched her back to the transport truck. Rain started to fall, soft and cold, dripping down her silver hair. She tilted her head up toward the sky, closing her eyes as if the rain was something precious. Maybe it was. Maybe on her world rain didn't fall like this. Inside the holding bay, she was chained to the wall, metal cuffs reinforced. She didn't resist. She just sat there, silent. Rain watched her for hours from the other side of the cell. He told himself it was his duty. But deep down he was curious. At some point during the night, he stepped closer to her cell. "Do you understand me?" he asked quietly. For a moment, nothing. Then slowly she nodded. "What's your name?" She hesitated again, then whispered, voice soft like wind on glass. "Lyra." The way she said it carried something more than a name. It carried a memory, a home, a life before chains. Over the next few days, Lyra remained in that cell. Rain kept watch, bringing her water and small rations. She didn't eat much, but she would sit near the tiny vent in the ceiling and watch the rain outside like it was telling her a story. One night, when most of the base was asleep, Rain asked the question he'd been holding back. "Why were you out there? Why didn't you fight?" Lyra looked at him, and for the first time he saw the truth in her eyes. Not anger, not hatred. Sorrow. "I was running," she whispered. "From the war. From your soldiers. From mine." She wasn't a fighter. She was just trying to survive. Rain's chest tightened. He thought about all the times he'd been told that the enemy was ruthless. He thought about the propaganda, the slogans, the endless promises that war was necessary. And then he looked at this thin, trembling girl with stars in her eyes, and he couldn't make those lies fit anymore. The war didn't feel black and white anymore. It felt gray, quiet, heavy. Lyra started to trust him in small ways. When he entered the cell, she no longer looked away. She listened when he spoke. She told him small things, that her world had skies made of light, not clouds, that her people spoke through songs, that the sound of thunder frightened her because it reminded her of human bombs. One night, a storm broke across the frontier base. Lightning flashed against the walls. The alarms wailed as another unit reported enemy movement. Soldiers rushed through the halls, shouting orders. Rain ran to her cell. She was curled in the corner, shaking. The thunder was too loud. "It's okay," he whispered, kneeling down beside the bars. "You're safe here." Her glowing eyes lifted to his. "Safe with you?" He hesitated. It was a simple question, but it carried everything. "Yes," he said finally. "With me." The next day, new orders arrived. All Zalari prisoners were to be transferred to a high-security camp. Everyone knew what that meant. They wouldn't come back. Rain stared at the transfer file. He could pretend not to care. He could obey orders. But when he walked down the corridor and saw Lyra standing in chains, eyes filled with quiet trust, something inside him broke. That night, when the guards were thin and the rain masked every sound, Rain unlocked the cell. She stepped out slowly, unsure if this was real. "Why?" she whispered. "Because not everyone out here wants to be a monster," he replied. They ran through the dark forest, cold rain pouring down. Sirens blared behind them. Soldiers shouted. Searchlights cut through the trees. Lyra stumbled more than once, her wrists bruised from the cuffs still clamped around them. Rain pulled her forward, refusing to let go. At the edge of the forest, they found the wreck of her old escape pod, half buried, cracked, but still flickering with faint blue light. He worked quickly to power it up. They didn't have much time. As the engines hummed weakly to life, Lyra looked at him, tears glowing softly on her cheeks. "You'll be hunted," she said. "For helping me," he smiled faintly. "I've been a soldier my whole life. For once, I want to do something human." She stepped closer. For a moment, they just stood there, a soldier and a prisoner, an alien and a man, surrounded by rain and darkness. She reached up, her cold fingers brushing his face. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't love. It was something deeper, a promise that this moment would live forever. The engines roared to life. She climbed into the pod. Before the hatch closed, she turned to him one last time. "Rain," she said softly. "I'll remember your name." And then she was gone. The pod shot into the stormy sky, disappearing beyond the clouds. The alarms faded into the night. Rain stood there, soaked in rain, watching the stars swallow her whole. They would call him a traitor, a criminal, a soldier who lost his way. But for the first time in his life, he felt free. Years later, on a quiet night beneath a lonely sky, he still looked up at the stars. And every now and then, when the wind was soft and the world was silent, he could almost hear a voice whispering across the dark, "I remember," and that was enough.